Welcome to this week's edition of Ginshinjitsu Self-Help Online. I'm Jude Burns, and I'm really glad you're here. The topic for this week is your questions and answers, and I've got some queued up from folks who have sent them in ahead of time, so I'm going to dive in. I will share my screen, and we'll get started. All right, the first thing is a disclaimer. Ginshinjitsu is absolutely not intended to be a substitute for your medical assistance that you're getting otherwise. But boy, even in this, especially in this time right now, having the complement of doing Ginshinjitsu is really, really helpful. And I find it comforting. Today is question and answer day. Again, people have asked questions in advance and I've prepared the answers. And those who are online will get a chance to ask their questions after I'm done with this part of the presentation. And then I will queue those up as well before we get into our self-help. The reference books that we use for self-help are the three that Mary took about 30 years to write. And the way to order those is there on that slide. And then at any bookstore, you can find the Touch of Healing book. It's a really easy read and a great reference book as well. And as you are pursuing your Ginshinjitsu practice, I really recommend that you journal, just jot down a couple of notes about what you did and anything that you've observed as a result. One of the common questions that comes in is, what is this thing called Ginshinjitsu? And you can find that information on my website, on the email invitations to these classes, etc. But in a nutshell, the short version of the story is Jiro Murai, pictured on the left side of the screen here, was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And so he went off to his cabin to die. And for a week, he held his fingers in what he had seen as mudras on various statues and on art pieces throughout Japan. He fasted, and he focused on his breathing. Those were the three things that he did for a week. He passed out on the seventh day, thought he was dying, and awoke the next day cured. He dedicated the rest of his life to figuring out how the heck this happened. Mary Burmeister met Jiro Murai during World War II when she was over there. She was an American citizen who went to Japan. And she learned the art from Jiro Murai. Then she got married and came back to the U.S., and he asked her to bring it to the U.S. So she did. She studied for many, many years before she started teaching in the 1960s. It took off from there like wildfire, and I quote a lot of her phrases because she really was ahead of her time. Some of these thoughts and philosophies that she shares are commonplace now, but certainly they were not in the 1960s. So we owe the Western version of this art to Mary Burmeister, translating it for us to understand. The foundation, in addition to the breath of Ginshinjitsu, are these spheres of energy called safety energy locks. They're the building blocks of our body. They each have a specific function and meaning. So you'll notice when you look at this picture that they are not in numerical order like we with our Western minds would expect them to be from top to bottom, 1 to 26. They are born from a particular depth. And the concept of depth, these are layers of our physical body, is explained in the Touch of Healing book quite nicely. So I'll just let you look that up for more information or continue on with these classes because we're going to be talking about that in the coming months. So that dictates when and where these safety energy locks are located on our body. They look like points on this diagram, but they're actually three-dimensional spheres of energy the size of our palm. So when you look at the palm size of the man pictured here, you can see that those points are much, much smaller. It's simply a way of communicating the general location. So when you're holding these safety energy locks, what we advise is that you feel around and look for what I call the sweet spot. Where is that ideal location where the energy may be blocked? And then you settle down there. Mary has really focused this work on the attitudes and the preconceptions we have about what she calls projects or labels. We say we have a disease, and that brings it into our body as if it's part of us. That language does not support, oh, whatever this project is going to come and it's going to go away. So all of her work is really focusing on just get rid of those labels. Just, don't adopt them into your being. Acknowledge that they're there, and then divert your attention to how can I focus on the 26 safety energy locks and these combinations that were given to me to let that project go away. Things come and go in our body, and Ginshinjitsu can help accelerate them going away. So that's the background on Ginshinjitsu. And again, there's way more information on my website that I'll direct you to if you'd like to have more information. It is an art and not a technique. And when I do these small snippets that I'm posting on YouTube, it sounds like it's a technique. And when we talk about certain projects in this Q&A session, it really does sound like a technique when I give recommendations about which Ginshinjitsu holds to use for whatever you're asking about. That really is just touching the surface of this art. We are all the artists, and each of us has different manifestations, different reasons for these projects manifesting. And what Mary says is be your own testimony. So you will hear that there are various ways to harmonize projects. And it's really up to you to dive in, practice, and listen to your body's messages so that you understand what works best for you. This actually is how Western medicine works as well. If you pin a doctor down, they're going to tell you that, sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. And each one of their patients is unique, and different combinations of things work differently for folks. We think that a particular medication is going to be the be-all, end-all, and that's in fact not the case. That's why they rattle off all the side effects or the potential side effects. So it's the same with Ginshinjitsu. You be your testimony and you figure out what works for you. So let's dive in with the questions. First one, my emotions right now are all over the place, mostly because of fear, for example, of finances, and then into irritation. So this bouncing between fear and irritation is what the question is. How do I, and then without explicitly stating, how can I harmonize that? Well, Ginshinjitsu teaches us that we can harmonize each one of our emotions simply by holding one of our fingers or our thumb. And the emotions are listed here, and you can harmonize worry by holding your thumb, fear by holding your index finger, anger by holding your middle finger, sadness by holding your ring finger, and trying too hard or pretense by holding your little finger. So to specifically address this question, what would I hold? If I'm vacillating, going back and forth between fear and anger, I can get in the habit of holding my index finger for a few minutes and then my middle finger for a few minutes. And I'm going to stop the share here for just a moment and demonstrate this. In Ginshinjitsu, the hold is very, very light. This is energy work. It is not tissue manipulation or massage. So you simply wrap your opposite hand around the finger that you're holding, and you can feel around from your knuckles all the way up the sides, the middle knuckle, the top of the finger, the top knuckle, the tippy top, the nail portion. And then if there are any clicks, Mary used to call it, your tendons kind of clicking, that's a good place to hang out. And then lighten your touch. If there's anything sore, if you have sore knuckles, this is really, really great for arthritis, even rheumatoid arthritis. So simply lightly hold that finger. And the hold is for 2 to 3 minutes, or however long you feel like doing it, and then move on to the next. So if I'm going back and forth between fear and anger, whenever I think of it, I'm going to hold my index finger and my middle finger on either or both of my hands. And this is be your own testimony. You being the artist, you figure out which hand or both hands your body's calling for. So you really, really want to tune in. Am I always holding my left hand? No judgment. It's just interesting. That would be something that I would journal. And as you learn more and more about this art, different things may occur about why that is, that you're always gravitating to one side or the other. The most important thing when you are doing these holds is to let your body decide, get your mind out of it. So when I tell you, when we do the practice, hold your index finger, whichever hand you want to hold is the right one. Don't overthink it. That is the simple way of harmonizing those two attitudes. Now, if you hold those two fingers and it's not really helping, you're not getting the results that you're after, then we have amplifying holds. Like I said, this is an art. There are choices here. So one of the decisions or things to consider is, am I in the fear emotion or am I really worried? And I like Mary's description of worry here. We don't often think of worry as being depression. I think obsession and preoccupation, that mental tape playing over and over, makes sense for worry. Worry is also anxiety and self-protection. So during a pandemic, the emotion that needs to be harmonized may in fact be worry more so than fear. We can harmonize by holding our fingers all 144,000 body energy functions. And I certainly can't get into those on this short session. However, just know that you're harmonizing a whole lot more than just the things that I'm listed here. Someone else had a question about stomach projects that she has going on. So my worry finger is my thumb, and it also harmonizes my stomach. So 2 birds, 1 stone. So how do I do the amplifying holds for helping worry? The first thing I'm going to do is hold my thumb. Again, this is for a couple of minutes. Then I'm going to hold my middle finger. And then I'm going to hold my little finger. And one thing, this is a repeat of a class that we did a while back. And what we did was traced our hand. And when you actually do an activity, those of you who are educators know this, if you're actually physically doing something, this is going to solidify the learning even more than just being passively listening to whatever is going on. So I really recommend you take that journal that you're using for Ginshinjitsu, you trace your hand, and then you write the patterns for these, and then you practice them and get them into your muscle memory. So that harmonizes worry, those three fingers. Or you can simply hold the thumb. Be your own testimony, be your own experiment. Mary and many, many others identify that fear is the core of all attitudes. I really talk about the spectrum of our emotions and attitudes going from fear to love. And you're going to be very interested to know that the amplified hold for harmonizing fear is the universal symbol for I love you. So the first thing that we do to harmonize fear is hold our thumb, then our index finger, then our little finger. These three fingers, when you hold them up, are the universal symbol of I love you. So we are getting rid of our fear by amplifying our love. That too is its own topic, but this is the way to harmonize fear. If you're sure that you don't even have to be sure, just experiment. Is this really where I am? You see here that depression is also associated with fear, and it was associated with worry. So there's overlap. It's different for different people. Or you can hold your index finger. The anger finger is the middle finger, and to amplify the harmony of that anger, and anger is anything on the anger spectrum. It's being irritable, frustrated. You know, you're looking around and people are congregating too close together and it's frustrating. You know, that's where you're going to do the anger flow. So you're first going to hold your little finger, then you're going to hold your ring finger, then you're going to hold your middle finger. Or you can simply hold your middle finger. And the joke is, rather than give the finger, hold the middle finger. So those are the three flows that address that first question of moving back and forth between fear or worry and anger. The next question is, I'm having trouble breathing, and Ginshinjitsu does not diagnose. It doesn't diagnose when you're doing it as self-help, and when you come to me as a practitioner, I don't diagnose. I have a lot of clients that want diagnosis. Why is this happening to me? What are you hearing? And Ginshinjitsu is simple. It's simply harmonizing. So when I hear someone that says, I need help with X, I think of what's the harmonizing flow for that. And for harmonizing our breath, our ring finger does that. So what I showed initially on the hand was the ring finger is the finger to harmonize sadness and grief. So here is the list of the emotions that fall under the sadness and grief category. And the ring finger also helps with breathing. If you're going to do the amplified version of the sadness or grief or the breathing flow, then you would hold your thumb, your index finger, your middle finger, and then your ring finger. So isn't that interesting? You're holding almost all of your fingers for this particular flow. This is a very, very powerful sequence to go through. We can get stuck in grief and sadness, and it really, really hampers our joy and bliss in living in this life. So this is a great flow to learn and get in the habit of doing. The next question is, how do I help earaches? So Ginshinjitsu works on emotions, as we've been talking about, as well as physical challenges. So here's a physical one. I feel an earache coming on. That's my little finger. Holding your little finger, and it's the finger opposite to the ear that's giving you challenges. The others are generally, you're going to hold the same side fingers as the project. So if you have something going on your left side, you're generally going to hold your left fingers, and vice versa for the right side. For this one, because of the way the energy is flowing through the body, it's the opposite little finger. So if you have a right earache coming on, you're going to hold the left finger. And this is one where maybe your mind does need to come into it so that you can be most efficient. It's not going to hurt you if you hold the same side finger, and it will harmonize because the energy is mediating and running through both sides of our body. However, it won't be the most efficient way, and that's what we're after. This is energy work, and it may be subtle to begin with, so we definitely want to choose what the most efficient thing is to do at the time. If you want an amplified little finger flow, then your first hold would be that little finger, and then your next hold would be the ring finger. All right, so some of them start with the finger that you're harmonizing, and some of them don't. There's really no rule of thumb for how these go. It really is just practice and study until you learn more about the art, and then the reason why these are the holds becomes more evident. But that really is advanced study. The beautiful thing about Ginshinjitsu is you can be efficient and effective right off the bat. You can listen to one of these videos and harmonize your health amazingly well for the rest of your life. Or you can get attracted to it and want to study it more, and then it's really like a great big puzzle coming together. So either way, it's a fun pursuit. The next question is, how do I just relax? I can't stop my chattering mind. First thing is, turn off the TV. Any of these distractions that are not supporting us being in beautiful harmony should be minimized to the utmost. And then once you've done that, if you still can't relax, then we have Safety Energy Lock 17 that lives in our wrist. It's the outside of the wrist. I'm going to stop the share here for a moment. Safety Energy Lock 17. Here's my wrist, and I have my wrist bone. It's this whole area here. Remember, it's the size of my palm, so it's practically my whole wrist would cover Safety Energy Lock 17. But the way to hold is simply put your fingertips below your wrist bone, and then again, feel around. Feel if there's any tender spot, realizing that you have the whole size of your palm in order to find that sweet spot. And then this is a really it's tender skin here outside our wrist, so really make sure that your touch is light. All right, so that's how we relax. Its function, Safety Energy Lock 17's function, is to relax the mind and nerves. So that's a really natural place to hold. If you're standing, giving a presentation, you very naturally stand with your hand on your opposite wrist. That's our body's inherent nature, knowing Ginshinjitsu can help itself. So just as a recap, we can get rid of any emotions, attitudes, by holding each of our fingers. And the acronym to help you remember which finger helps what is get rid of worry fast. So worry is my thumb, and you can think of a baby sucking its thumb, and it makes sense that a baby would be worried about being in this crazy world. And then F is for fear, A is for anger, S is for sadness, and T is for trying to or pretense. Pretense. I'm tense, and before that, it's almost like you're going to give a presentation and you're nervous ahead of time. That's pretense. Trying too hard. Just be present. Holding that little finger will help that. And then the physical helpers that we talked about today, the thumb helps the stomach. It also helps the lungs. The index finger helps with any back projects. That was not a question, but I had my entire practice in Hawaii was practically people with bad backs. Everybody has challenges with their backs, it seems. So index finger is key for that. And it also helps our lungs. The middle finger helps with eye projects. You can think of blind with rage. So if I'm always in a rage emotion, it's going to impact my eyesight and other eye projects. It's not just eyesight, it's styes, it's dark circles under my eyes, twitching eyes. That's my middle finger. We are in allergy season right now, and sometimes we get a tickle cough, and we definitely don't want to be coughing and having people think that we have COVID-19, right? So if you have that tickle cough, you want to just hold your middle finger, and that I've seen it stop immediately. I've experienced it. I've had clients on the table who get a tickle and I don't want to stop what I'm doing. I just ask them to hold their middle finger and it stops. It's really handy to have. Another good one for breathing is the ring finger. And as we discussed, to help your opposite ear, you can hold your little finger. So that is the summary of what I would suggest for those projects that were asked as questions ahead of time. And just as we're transitioning into asking the online folks for any questions they may have and transitioning into practicing our self-help together, I've got this quote up here. Mary's name for Ginshinjitsu is it's a physio philosophy. And that means that it's also about, nature and this effortless reality. She talks about being the smile, having laughter, taking ourselves not quite so seriously. Sometimes that's hard, especially in situations where we are right now, when we do have very concrete challenges that we're addressing. And if we can, in this moment, just relax, let go, and find some humor, or at least a smile, then that may help as well. So it really is about this attitude precedes challenges that may come up in my body. If I can harmonize those attitudes, then labels, minor or critical labels, or disease, dis-ease, probably won't come into my body. It may come in, but Ginshinjitsu can have it release much more quickly than if I didn't do Ginshinjitsu. Okay. So I am going to stop the recording now, and thank you for joining us for this portion of it. Join us for the practice session coming next.